In the 1990s, comic books were seeing a massive influx in the popularity of anti-heroes such as Spawn, Venom, and the Punisher. These characters straddled the line between good and bad, often having no qualms about brutally murdering their villains while saying pithy one-liners. In a world where these type of characters were dominating the marketplace, people were beginning to question if old-fashioned heroes like Superman and Batman, who were usually written with strict moral codes preventing them from killing, had any place in a modern setting. The Superman comics chose to address and explore this by killing off the character and having several alternate versions of the character try to take over the mantle in the infamous Death and Return of Superman arc. At the same time that this arc was running, no really, it was the same time, and several characters in Knightfall can be seen wearing black armbands to memorialize the late Man of Steel. Writers of the line of Batman comics decided to take a less lethal approach and tell a massive story where Batman would be taken out of commission and replaced by a new Batman who would embody all of the concepts that fans were encouraging the original Batman to take on to show why they didn't work for the character. This massive story was told across several titles in the Batman line and also had versions written for novelization and radio, although we are obviously looking at the comics today. With this in mind, let's take a look at the prelude to Knightfall. In the prelude to the main Knightfall storyline, we are introduced to the secondary antagonist of the story, Bane. Although he has a lot of the most memorable moments in the story, it is important to remember he's not the main villain of the piece, and is mostly just there to get the real story in motion. Bane is the son of a revolutionary in the country of Santa Prisca. When the coup his father was involved with failed, Bane's pregnant mother was placed in prison so that her son could live out his father's sentence. Bane's mother dies in the prison while he's a young boy, and soon after he has a vision of his future self who tells him that he has the power to conquer the world if he can overcome his fear. At this moment he sees a vision of a giant bat that haunts his dreams. Bane grows up in the brutal prison, becoming cruel and incredibly strong and intelligent. His cellmate, Bird, tells him about the city he came from, Gotham, and the bat-like creature who protects it. Bane vows to fulfill his destiny and break the bat. He is subjected to experiments with the chemical compound known as Venom that grants him even more incredible strength, and he soon escapes the prison with his loyal men, with plans of going to Gotham and developing a plan to destroy Batman. In Gotham, Batman has his hands full trying to balance his life as Bruce Wayne with his Batman activities. His girlfriend, Vicky Vale, has recently broken up with him, and Black Mask and his false face gang are burning down Wayne Enterprise buildings in order to drive down the stock price of Bruce's company. He is extremely burnt out and is having trouble keeping up with the demands of his double life. Tim Drake, the current Robin in this story, is balancing his life as a crime fighter with school and his wheelchair-bound father's recovery with the help of a doctor named Chandra Kinsolving. She is a gifted healer who Jack Drake remarks has an almost spiritual skill at healing. Jim Gordon is getting married to his old flame from Batman Year One, Sarah Essen, who hates the fact that Gordon has become so reliant on a vigilante. After an argument between Batman and Sarah on the roof of the GCPD about how he has drawn Jim into his lifestyle, she shoots the bat signal, causing it to crack, symbolizing how Batman's life is beginning to fall apart. In fact, if you look at the various covers of the Knightfall story, you see the bat symbol in the corner changes, tracking the state of Batman through the story. As an exhausted Batman fights crime in Gotham, Bane watches, trying to learn as much about his enemy as he can. Bruce Wayne has Lucius Fox hire a man named Jean-Paul Valley as a security guard at Wayne Enterprises. Jean-Paul is actually the vigilante Azrael, who was brainwashed and trained by a shadowy group called the Order of Saint Dumas to be the lethal sword of vengeance, using a method of hypnotic control called the System. Batman and Robin have taken him under their wing in order to help him overcome his programming and mold him into a less lethal hero. Batman becomes so burnt out from fighting crime that he actually passes out on the steps of the Batcave. In order to figure out what's wrong with him, he gets in touch with Dr. Kinsolving, who tells him that whatever is preventing him from sleeping is being worsened by his mind's refusal to admit there is an issue. Chandra and Bruce get along well, and both are struck by an immediate but unspoken attraction. She gives Bruce some sedatives, which makes him unavailable when Killer Croc begins attacking a mall. Robin has Jean-Paul disguise himself as Batman, and the two go after Croc. They struggle against Croc until Bane shows up, wanting to test his strength against Croc. He absolutely wrecks Croc with the help of his Venom enhancements, and then goes after the two heroes. Once he gets a closer look at Jean-Paul in the Batsuit, he realizes it's not the real Batman and leaves, declaring that they're not worth his time. Bane continues spying on the real Batman, who is barely managing to stay upright most of the time. He's so exhausted. Bane steals a large supply of military hardware and uses it to free all of the inmates at Arkham Asylum, hoping that rounding up the various supercriminals will exhaust trust Batman enough that he will be able to easily defeat him. Batman arrives at the asylum where some of the inmates have taken the staff hostage. Batman frees the hostages, but all the super criminals escape. Bane watches from a distance as an exhausted and distraught Batman looks to the heavens and lets out a savage cry of "Nyar!" As the prelude ends, it brings us into Knightfall proper. The next few issues of both Batman and Detective Comics are about Batman and Robin making their way through the gauntlet of supervillains as they struggle to keep the city safe and Batman grows more and more exhausted. There are a lot of great encounters with the villains, with some of the highlights being a standoff with Victor Zsasz, who has taken a group of college girls hostage, the ventriloquist, who has teamed up with a sock puppet named Socko to try and recover the ventriloquist's usual dummy, Scarface, and the Joker and Scarecrow teaming up to kidnap the mayor and using fear toxin to force him to make phone calls sabotaging the city, such as firing the fire department. Batman struggles to capture Firefly, who is burning down as much of the city as he can, and ends up in a situation where he is forced to let Firefly go, as continuing to fight him would have caused Firefly to perish in the fire. This is important as it is the story going out of its way to bring up the fact that not only does Batman not kill, he will go out of his way to save a villain's life if they are in danger. He takes a rare night off to attend a charity ball as Bruce Wayne and is captured along with various other wealthy men by Poison Ivy. Bane is watching this unfold, and the minute he sees Bruce, he deduces that this man is Batman. Bruce is able to sneak away from the other kidnappees and change into his batsuit and capture Poison Ivy. The Riddler's men are sick of his gimmicks and oust him from the gang. In a moment that really explores the themes of the book, Riddler complains that with all the deranged killers that have taken over Gotham, there may not be any room or attention given to his less homicidal riddle-themed schemes. He takes over a live talk show to get the attention he feels he deserves, but he is stopped by Robin. Batman goes after Joker and Scarecrow, who have taken the mayor to a traffic tunnel they are holding hostage. Batman is gassed by Scarecrow and sees horrible visions of Joker killing the second Robin, Jason Todd. He eventually overcomes the gas and takes out the Scarecrow, but when he gets to Joker, he begins savagely beating him, screaming out Jason's name over and over again. Joker sets off an explosion that floods the tunnel, and Batman is forced to let the Joker and Scarecrow go in order to save the mayor, once again showing the lengths he'll go to preserve human life. Seeing that his plan has almost come to fruition, Bane sends his most trusted men after Batman as one final test. Batman barely manages to defeat the three assassins, and by the end of the fight he can barely stand. He goes back to the cave, desperate for some rest. He goes into the manor and finds Alfred unconscious and Bane waiting for him. Bane and Batman stand face to face as Bane tells Bruce that all of his suffering over the last few months has been so he can rule Gotham. Bruce is shocked at how cheaply Bane values human life, and Bane tells him, you know what, I can do that better.
I'd kill for anything. I'd kill to silence a grating voice, to darken the lights in the eyes that dared look at me.
Bruce recognizes that Bane may just be the greatest source of madness and evil he has ever faced. Bane agrees. The exhausted Bruce masks up, saying, "In that case, one more time," and attacks the villain. Their fight leads them into the Batcave, with Bane trashing the trophies of Batman's accomplishments as he tosses him around. He throws him through the Jason Todd Memorial costume display and tells him to beg for mercy, but Batman tells him to go to hell. Bane decides that death would be too kind a fate for him, and he lifts Batman over his head, and in one of the most iconic splash pages in Batman history, slams him down onto his knee, breaking Batman's back. Bane drops him to the floor and declares him broken and done. Bane brings the broken Batman to the heart of the city and shows him to the people and the police. He throws Batman to the ground, claiming Gotham as his own. The cops call an ambulance for the broken hero, and Alfred, Tim, and Jean-Paul show up posing as EMTs and take Batman away, hoping to get him medical attention without compromising his secret identity. Alfred tries to treat Bruce in the Batcave, but he's running a fever and needs medication to reduce his spinal swelling. He sends Robin out to find the meds and confides to Jean-Paul that Bruce may never walk again. As the news of Bane's attack spreads throughout the city, a worried Commissioner Gordon lights the bat signal, hoping to hear from his friend. Robin shows up and Gordon helps him, no questions asked, to get the medication to save Batman's life. As Bane begins taking over crime in Gotham, Bruce mourns his loss, realizing that he most likely will never be able to be Batman again. Tim calls Chandra Kinsolving to get her to help treat Bruce, and then he and Alfred trash Bruce's car so they can explain his injuries. Bruce sees the chaos overwhelming the city and decides that Gotham needs a Batman. He considers asking Dick Grayson, but decides against it, as Dick has become his own man, and Bruce doesn't think he'd say yes. He instead chooses Jean-Paul to take over the mantle until Bruce can recover. Tim warns Jean-Paul about the huge shoes he is filling, saying that no one is as good as Bruce. In a dark bit of foreshadowing, Jean-Paul turns to him and says, "You're wrong. I'll be better." So the new Batman takes to the street. He's reckless and kind of brutal, isn't interested in detective work, loves the thrill that comes with the role, and seems reluctant to work with Robin. When the vigilante Anarchy escapes and sees Batman taking out criminals, he decides that Batman is the real problem in Gotham, as he attracts new maniacs who want to challenge him for control of the city. He plans to kill Batman, who is going after the Scarecrow, who has kidnapped and hypnotized a group of college students to act as his henchmen in a scheme to gas the city. Batman has promised Bruce not to go after Bane, which he laments, thinking that killing Bane would solve all of their problems, but he continues to hunt Scarecrow, eventually confronting him on a rooftop. Scarecrow tries to get away by forcing one of the mind-controlled students to jump off the roof, thinking that Batman will save the student, allowing him to escape. But to the shock of everyone, Batman lets the kid fall so he can take down Scarecrow. This is a massive change from the usual Batman, showing that the new Dark Knight is less concerned with protecting life than he is with punishing evildoers. It is only through the intervention of Anarchy that the student is saved. Bruce Wayne has been getting closer with Chandra, and their relationship is definitely passing professional boundaries. He considers telling her his secret so that she can better treat him, and wheels himself over to Tim Drake's house to talk to her. He discovers that Jack Drake and Chandra are being kidnapped. He manages to take out a couple of the thugs, but is in no condition to rescue them, and they are taken. Meanwhile, Robin continues to try and work with a new Batman. He grows increasingly concerned with how brutal and reckless he is towards the criminals he's encountering as they try to gain more information on Bane. Batman is so focused on his goals that he abandons a severely outnumbered Robin in a fight and threatens to kill the criminals if they do not give up Bane. Bruce uses the detective skills that the new Batman is neglecting to discover that Jack Drake and Chandra have been taken to Santa Prisca, and him and Alfred set out to rescue them. They leave, telling Jean-Paul that the Batcave is all his. Jean-Paul has a sinister moment, relishing that the Batcave and everything in it is now his. Jean-Paul decides that he needs an edge and decides to update the Batsuit, creating intense clawed gauntlets, and uses the system to begin designing a new suit for himself. Tim laments that the new Batman is pushing him away and remembers why he took the job in the first place. After the death of Jason Todd, Bruce's Batman became more reckless and angry, and Tim became the new Robin, believing that Batman needs a Robin to temper some of that darkness. This is an important element that the story is referencing, as you must remember, the entire point of this arc is to explore how necessary certain elements that some 90s readers were considering dated and goofy, like Robin and Batman's no-killing rule, actually are to the character, by introducing a new Batman who seems to have open disdain for both. The new Batman takes his scary gauntlets and confronts Bane, telling him that he intends to kill him. Bane responds by saying,
"So, I have brought ruin to Wayne, and his neophyte brings ruin to the Batman."
Bane wins the fight and gets away. Robin argues with Batman about his extreme methods. Batman argues that the old Batman was created for older times and fires Robin. He finishes his Batsuit redesign and begins building it as Ace the Bat-Hound and Harold, Batman's mute hunchbacked tech expert, retreat from the main cave, once again showing how this Batman is distancing himself from the cheesier elements of the character. Nightwing shows up and is filled in on the situation by Robin. He is hurt that Bruce didn't ask him to be Batman, but tells Tim they must trust Bruce's decision. Batman tries out his new brutal redesigned suit and sets out to confront Bane again. Bane and Batman fight in the town square, which leads to a fight atop a train. Batman's disregard for the people around him and singular focus on taking out Bane almost causes the train to crash, but Robin arrives and saves the train and its passengers. Batman defeats Bane, and his brainwashing tries to convince him to kill the villain, but he overcomes the system and decides to spare him. Robin tells him that despite their differences, he has shown that he is worthy of the mantle of the Bat. Batman gives him a brief thanks and runs off into the night.
The pre-crisis era. This era basically encompasses all of the original DC stories, beginning in 1938 with Action Comics #1, which gave us the Man of Steel, the world's first real superhero. This marked the official start of what's known as the Golden Age of comics. For DC Comics, this age gave us Detective Comics #27 in May of 1939, which gave us Batman, All-Star Comics #3 in 1940, which gave us the Justice Society of America for the very first time with the Flash, Green Lantern, and Hawkman, and we got All-Star Comics #8 in 1941 that gave us Wonder Woman. This era flowed on into the Silver Age of comics with 1956's Showcase #4, which introduced us to Barry Allen, a different version of the Flash, and 1960 giving us the Justice League of America for the first time. Now, I like to think this is where things start to get just a wee bit more confusing. You've now got classic Flash from the Golden Age and Barry Allen Flash from the Silver Age, and these two come face to face in The Flash #123 in 1961, creating the multiverse, with Golden Age Flash being from Earth 2 and Silver Age Flash being from Earth 1. The Silver Age also saw DC's very first interdimensional crisis in Justice League of America #21 from 1963, when the JLA meet the Golden Age's JSA for the first time. From here we move smoothly on to the Bronze Age of comics, which gets a great little start when we get brought back to a darker version of Batman in 1970's Detective Comics #398, or The Secret of the Waiting Graves. We get some social commentary in the Green Lantern and Green Arrow team up in Green Lantern #76 in 1970, we are introduced to DC's New Gods in their self-titled comic from 1971, and we even get the Teen Titans first appearing as the Junior Justice League, with their preview being presented in DC Comics Presents #26 from 1980. And that is a brief summary of the pre-crisis era. This is now where it all goes down a rabbit hole, so before I become Dorothy and jump on down there, make sure you slap that like and subscribe button if you like the format out of this new video. Alright, let's get down that rabbit hole. In the pre-crisis era, many of DC's characters existed independently of one another on alternate Earths. This all came to a head when the era finally came to an end in 1986 with the first major crisis. This major event was the Crisis on Infinite Earths, and it was DC's first big reboot. It attempted to streamline continuity by eliminating this version of the multiverse and folding the characters who weren't retired into a single unified world. The 12-issue series takes the multiple Earths that had been established in the Golden, Silver, and Bronze Ages and has a lot of them destroyed by the Anti-Monitor, leaving only one Earth left. This surviving Earth had most of the Earth 2 heroes around during the time of World War II, and then most of the Earth 1 heroes would be the present day characters. Major characters had their origins retold with fixes that now aligned with the new DC Universe continuity. This leads us directly into the post-crisis era. This next stage moves us forward from 1986 and covers both the Dark Age and part of the modern age of comics all the way up until 2011. This was the period during which superheroes had their first major explosion of mainstream popularity, meaning that this post-crisis DC Universe became the main influence on cross-media adaptations that began to emerge, which by extension helped to cement this period as the most definitive version of the DCU in the minds of many people. This era began starting during the Dark Age of comics, when we got really great stories like Batman the Dark Knight in 1968 and Watchmen in September of the same year that introduced us to another separate universe, meaning we're back into a multiverse again. 1986 also gave us Legends #1, where Darkseid attacks, prompting a new Justice League to form that would fight alongside the newly formed Suicide Squad. This is also the era that gave us the death of Superman in January of 1993. Now, I mentioned cross-media versions of DC stories, and DC Comics would show us that characters from shows like Batman the Animated Series could move into the DC Universe, with Harley Quinn making her arrival in the pages of comics in 1993. A year later, 1994 gave us Zero Hour, which would clean up some standing continuity issues with a story of a power-crazed Hal Jordan trying to remake the world in his image. The next age would be the previously mentioned modern age, which, I'm gonna be honest, just begins to kind of make things more confusing yet again, with a few more semi-minor crises and events. For example, we get Infinite Crisis in 2005, where some characters who lost their realities in Crisis on Infinite Earths come back to the DC universe with Superboy Prime and Alexander Luthor from Earth 3 trying to get their Earths back, creating a new Crisis and the Earth referred to as New Earth, which is very confusing. A year after this, in May of 2006, we get the 52-issue maxi series called 52, which sets up a new standard for the way the multiverse is going to be set up in the DC multiverse going forward. In this story, Mr. Mind alters some worlds while also creating the new multiverse made up of 52 different Earths. 2 years later, in 2008, we got Final Crisis, which isn't actually technically the final crisis in DC Comics, like not the final last one. Basically, this is the story where Darkseid conquers the Earth and kills / time displaces Batman. And a year after that, we got the Blackest Night story where the villain Necron brings undead superheroes and villains into the Black Lanterns, resulting eventually in the Brightest Day story that sees a bunch of characters rebirthed. Midway through the modern age in 2011, the New 52 era began with the event named Flashpoint. In Flashpoint, Barry Allen Flash, who sacrificed himself in Crisis on Infinite Earths and reappeared through the Speed Force leading up to this event, wakes up in a reality that is not his own, the Flashpoint reality. And he has to use the Speed Force to change reality back to normal. When he eventually does this though, he actually creates Earth Zero, which is a lot like New Earth but also very different. This event brought the launch of 52 new titles, known funnily enough as the New 52. This was a near full reboot of the post-Crisis DCU, complete with new origins for many of its major characters and teams, with Action Comics and Detective Comics starting back at issue number 1 with retold origins. The only two major exceptions to the new origins were Batman, whose history actually kind of carried on since the 40s with a few revisions, and Green Lantern. This New 52 modern age is technically the continuity that we're still in, except the unpopularity of a lot of the changes made with the New 52, the fans wanting to return to parts of prior continuities, and the confusingness of the reboot itself resulted in a number of elements of post-Crisis continuity slowly seeping back into canon, with stories like Forever Evil in 2013, Convergence in June 2015, and DCU in August 2015. Now all of this came to a head after the events of Darkseid War in 2016's DC Rebirth, a soft reboot which began the process of formally reintroducing elements of post-Crisis continuity back into the mainstream DC universe. The most notable of these was the post-Crisis Superman, with Action Comics returning to the pre-New 52 numbering scheme, with the character being reintroduced and then merged with the New 52 Superman, who was no longer alive at this point, to take back his place within the main DC universe. It resulted in a hybrid continuity, which was still a continuation of the New 52, but also made it really confusing to know what the heck was and was not continuity. This post-DC Rebirth became the Prime Age era, that included stories like the awesome Dark Knight's Metal in 2017 and 2018, that introduced the Dark Multiverse, a flip-side infinite multiverse of all the bad things that can happen in the regular multiverse, Doomsday Clock in 2018 to 2020, which basically shows that Dr. Manhattan of the Watchmen has altered the DC timeline, editing key moments and characters out of reality in DC Rebirth, and it ultimately climaxed in 2020's Death Metal event, which officially got rid of the idea of separate continuities within DC, announcing that, pretty much, everything counts. So now, technically, everything is part of the same continuity, meaning the writers and the readers both get to decide for themselves what matters to them. Yes, you're right, that is confusing, and also frustratingly inconsistent. But it is recognizing the fact that in the real world, that's what we all really do anyways. Picking and choosing what we like for our favorite characters and essentially ignoring the rest. Currently, DC followed up Death Metal with Infinite Frontier number 0, which basically set up the current status quo for most of the DCU's major characters. Reading that would give you a route into all the current major ongoing events, and the Infinite Frontier maxi series, which follows the big picture story leading to the death of the Justice League and whatever the heck they are going to do from this point on. As the whole name of the Bat Family might suggest, this group of like-minded individuals surrounds itself around one central person: Batman. First appearing in Detective Comics number 27 in May of 1939, Batman, as most of you know, has been a key player in the DC universe pretty much since it began. As for his family, well, let's start off way back in the good old first days, the golden age of comics. This is the Bat family as it was before the whole DC universe first got reorganized, the first time. So it's also, technically, in the modern continuity, the Bat family of Earth 2. So, when Batman first showed up, he was caped crusading all by his lonesome. No parents, no butler, no nothing. Bob Kane and Bill Finger, the Batman creators, alongside Jerry Robinson, decided that Batman needed someone else, and so they created the very first member of what would become the Bat family in the form of Richard Dick Grayson as Robin the Boy Wonder. Robin first appeared in Detective Comics Volume 1 number 38 in April of 1940 when his birth family, the Flying Graysons, were accidentally killed and Bruce Wayne took in the young lad and trained him on how to fight crime. Batman and Robin operated as a solid two-player team for a long while. Now back in those early golden age days, Batman actually became an honorary member of the GCPD, and with that, Commissioner James Gordon, who also first appeared at the same time as Batman in Detective Comics number 27, became part of the Batman family. Now you can kind of count him, you can kind of not. It really depends on the era that we're talking about. But not too long after these three were operating as a well-oiled unit, we were introduced to another pivotal figure of the Batman family. Quite possibly the sticky glue that holds these traumatized and broken crime fighters together. Alfred Pennyworth, Alfred Beagle, or simply Alfred the Butler was introduced in Batman number 16 in May of 1943, acting as the #1 supporting member of the team, or group, or whatever you want to call them. Now, following this period of time, we start to shift towards the Silver Age of comics, and that's when, thanks to public pressures and scrutiny at the time, Batman, Robin, and the Bat family were given 4 more allies in the form of a dog, Ace the Bat Hound, appearing in Batman Volume 1 number 92 in June 1955, a Batman worshipping magical 5th dimensional imp called Batmite, who appeared in Detective Comics Volume 1 number 267 in May of 1959, and the dynamic duo were given female love interests in the form of Kathy Kane, Batwoman, first appearing in Detective Comics number 233 in July 1956, and Betty Kane, Kathy's niece, and the first ever Batgirl, appearing in Batman number 139 in April 1961. Now, these additions to the Bat family didn't last incredibly long, as editor Julius Schwartz took over control of the Batman comics in 1964 and got rid of Batwoman, who was seemingly de-lifed, Batgirl, who retired, Ace, who also retired, and Batmite, who was expelled from this dimension, as he thought the characters were too silly, especially for the new stories he wanted for the Batman character. So instead, Schwartz worked alongside the 1996 Batman TV show producer, William Dozier, in order to introduce a new female character. Barbara Gordon, who first appeared in August 1951, was introduced as the new Batgirl in Detective Comics Volume 1, issue 359 in January of 1967. As the daughter of Police Commissioner Gordon, it improved upon the previous Batgirl and Batwoman and let Barb kind of stand as her own character, not simply as a love interest, which is usually a good thing. And that kind of makes up the Silver Age. The current Bat family members all started to make moves in their own ways throughout the Bronze Age. Other characters like the villain Catwoman, or Selina Kyle on Earth 2, the Golden Age character's Earth, became a solid romantic interest for Batman, joining the Bat family alongside their daughter, Helena Wayne, who would go on to become Huntress. But again, this would be on Earth 2 and therefore doesn't really count for what we're talking about. Now, Richard Grayson, who was Robin at the time, started to become a very important member of the Teen Titans, but that caused DC some problems as the Batman and Robin dynamic was also starting to become popular again. In order for the two things to be able to happen and work simultaneously, early on in the 80s, Dick Grayson became the leader of the Teen Titans and took on the name of Nightwing, and the new Robin was introduced in the form of Jason J. Todd in Batman number 357 in March 1983. Jason was the son of another acrobatic circus family inspired by the Flying Graysons. Can you guess what their name was? Yes, that's right, it's the Flying Todds. Ooh. The Todds passed away at the hands of Killer Croc, leaving little Jason to be taken under the wing of Batman and join the Bat family. Now, the issue of the two Robins' extremely similar backstories left Jason being a little overlooked, but luckily for him, and for any other continuity or character issues that DC was dealing with at the time, the Crisis on Infinite Earths event had arrived in April 1985. Luckily, the family still remained largely the same after this event. Jason's story was worked to be a bit better, and both Alfred and Commissioner Gordon became more frequent supporting cast members. Batgirl Barbara Gordon seemed to kind of fall to the wayside though, as writers couldn't really figure out what to do with her. It is in the late 80s that Batman stories really hit a turning point, with both Batman the Killing Joke in July 1988 and Batman A Death in the Family starting in December of 1988, where the Joker crippled Barbara Gordon and took the life of Jason Todd, respectively. From this point, the family surprisingly seemed to actually grow more, with Tim Drake being introduced as the new Robin after he deduces the true identities of Batman and Robin, which took place in the Batman A Lonely Place of Dying storyline from Batman number 440 to 442 in October to December of 1989. And Barbara became an information broker and Batman's girl in the chair as Oracle, fully revealed in Suicide Squad Volume 1 number 38 in February 1990. The next addition to the Bat family would be introduced in Batman's Sword of Azrael number 1 in 1992, where we meet John Paul Valley, otherwise known as, you guessed it, Azrael, who becomes Batman's apprentice and even takes over his role in the 3-part Batman Knightfall crossover event starting in Batman number 492 in May of 1993 that sees the Venom-enhanced Bane break Bruce Wayne's spine. Azrael really stirred things up as Batman. He was much more violent and unethical than Bruce is, and as such caused the Bat family to kind of break apart temporarily. Tim Drake went off alone, Jim Gordon stopped working with the Bat, and Bruce stopped being interested in recovering from his injuries, forcing Alfred to walk away from his position. But Bruce obviously recovered and took the Batman mantle away from John Paul and temporarily gave it to Dick Grayson during Batman Prodigal from November 1994 to January of 1995. Everyone went back to their original places and Azrael came back and would team up with Batman from time to time. Two more members to the Bat family became introduced around this time as well. Helena Bartonelli, the daughter of a crime boss, eventually became the new Huntress in the post-Crisis mainstream universe, first appearing in Huntress number 1 in April of 1989. There was also Stephanie Brown, who was a friend of Tim Drake and daughter of the supervillain Cluemaster, who started off her vigilante career as Spoiler, appearing in Detective Comics Volume 1, number 647 in August of 1992. Gotham was struck by an earthquake and became a no man's land for criminals to run amok in Detective Comics number 719 in March 1998. And with that, the Bat family sprung into action. Helena took on the role of Batgirl to strike fear into criminals, but it resulted in a confrontation with Batman that Helena failed, so Batman instead handed the Batgirl costume and title over to a friend of Oracle who proved helpful in the start of the No Man's Land event. That would be Cassandra Cain. Cassandra is the daughter of assassins David Cain and Lady Shiva, and was bred to become the perfect killer, and she is actually one of the greatest martial artists in the world, even rivaling Batman. Alongside this new Batgirl, Batman called on all members of the current Bat family. That's Dick Grayson as Nightwing, Tim Drake Robin, Barbara Gordon as Oracle, Azrael, and even Selina Kyle Catwoman, alongside the Bat family supporters of Commissioner Gordon, Alfred Pennyworth, and Gotham City physician Leslie Tompkins. Together, they all successfully wrestled back control of Gotham City, so yay! That's good. After this point though, the team remained unchanged until the death of Azrael, which was really a turning point for the family. Batman distanced himself away from the team and started working with Sacha Bordeaux, Bruce Wayne's personal security and eventually Batman's crime-fighting partner, introduced in Detective Comics number 751 in December of 2000. The two are framed for the death of Vesper Fairchild though and go to prison, where Bruce escapes and Sacha gets blackmailed into becoming part of the secret organization called Checkmate. Now after this, a gang war breaks out in Gotham and Batman gets help from former League of Assassins assassin Onyx Adams, who helps out, becoming another member of the Bat family in 2004. This is also when Stephanie Brown rose to and fell from the Robin mantle and was seemingly killed. but not really. This led directly to Batman number 635 in February of 2005, otherwise known as the start of Batman Under the Hood, which saw the shocking return of an actually not dead Jason Todd as the extremely violent Red Hood, who joins the Bat family after causing them a whole hell of a lot of grief. From this point, we don't see any new additions to the Bat-themed family until Batman number 655 in September 2006, and the beginning of the Batman and Son storyline, which introduces Damian Wayne as the son of Bruce Wayne and Talia al Ghul. So yes, the addition of a surprise son left things a little tense in the Bat family, and when Batman was quote-unquote killed and sent to battle through time by Darkseid in 2008 to 2009's Final Crisis, it left a vacuum that became a battle royale across Gotham in the storyline Batman Battle for the Cowl. Some of the Bat family struggled to find the missing Batman, while others fought to take over the mantle. A final battle between Dick Grayson, Jason Todd, and Tim Drake ended up with a victory for Dick Grayson, who became Batman once again, promoting Damian Wayne to the mantle of Robin and forcing Tim Drake to become Red Robin. It's around this time we get an all-new Batwoman in 52 number 7 in August of 2006. Now while the Silver Age Batwoman was Kathy Kane, the new Batwoman mantle is taken up by the army brat Kate Kane, who is a lesbian expelled from West Point due to her sexuality. Now she is Bruce Wayne's cousin through her father Jacob Kane, who is Martha Wayne's brother. It is after this that Stephanie Brown is indeed still alive, and she steps into the new position of Batgirl from Cassandra Cain, who went on to become Black Bat and haunts my nightmares. In Batman and Robin number 16 in January of 2011, Bruce finally realizes that despite all of his lone work and brooding, he was never actually alone. So he decides to expand, and as Bruce Wayne, he reveals that Bruce was the beneficiary behind Batman's technology, and then Batman's reach would go worldwide as Batman Incorporated. But then we got the New 52 in September 2011, and it all didn't matter anymore. Essentially, New 52 for Batman sets him back to being an undercover urban legend, only being publicly active for 5 years. He has an alliance to Jim Gordon, but the GCPD are still hostile towards him. Dick Grayson still operates as Nightwing and was the original Robin, but never took on the Batman role. Barbara Gordon is Batgirl again, no longer wheelchair bound. Tim Drake is Red Robin and founding member of the Teen Titans. Jason Todd is still Red Hood, and he leads his own team called the Outlaws, and Damian Wayne is Robin. But now, to make things more confusing, in DC Rebirth in 2016 and DC Infinite Frontier in 2021, a lot of history is reworked back into continuity. So, to clean things up for the Bat family, during Bane's takeover of Gotham City, he snapped Alfred Pennyworth's neck in front of Damian Wayne. It broke the Robin, and he went rogue, leaving and eventually returning again as Robin. But while Damian was gone, Tim Drake took on the Robin role yet again. Barbara, who became Batgirl, stepped down to become Oracle again as the physical strain was too much on her spine. Stephanie Brown and Cassandra Cain stayed as Spoiler and Orphan respectively, but they were collectively known as Batgirls, which is confusing. And Kate Kane stayed as Batwoman. A new hero, the metahuman Duke Thomas, became the Signal and came into the Bat family starting as the leader of the 2015 We Are Robin gang. John Paul Valley stayed as Azrael, Helena Bartonelli became Huntress once again, and what may be a surprise to some of you, Harley Quinn also joined the Bat family, making amends from her time as a villain and under the very watchful eye of Batman. So what was the actual New 52? To truly understand the New 52, it has a lot more to do with looking at the publishing side of things at DC over the actual comic book continuity and stories. I actually came across this really helpful article from Polygon that goes into the details of what exactly happened during the New 52 reboot, with a bunch of written out interviews with people who were working for DC at the time. Prior to the decision to create the New 52, DC had a pretty in-depth and sprawling continuity that had been built up over decades of publishing, which presented the problem of DC stories being somewhat hard to jump into for new readers. Marvel had just found relative success with their Ultimate Universe comics, which were set in an alternate universe but provided younger, fresher, and somewhat more modern stories for their most famous characters that new readers could easily jump into. They had their own issues, but it was still successful, and DC saw this, obviously. The DC multiverse and continuity had been reworked before in infamous Crisis events that somewhat muddied the water of what and what wasn't continuity while establishing and reworking a multiverse. But this was different. DC had the idea for 52 new titles that start their characters and teams off fresh, younger, and relatively new to the game, with revamped origins occurring as a side effect of the awesome Flashpoint story. But some of those 52 titles also had new non-superhero stories to bring in readers who love the medium but don't really care for superheroes. It was controversial to say the least. On one hand, readers would be given fresh takes on some of their favorite heroes and villains, but on the other hand, you had decades of pre-existing stories that would suddenly not really matter anymore. It was an incredibly exciting thing for DC, and those working on it were going for it. But the problem with doing something like this was that they hadn't ever done exactly this before. Launching 52 new titles all at the same time was big, and it required a lot of cohesion between creators and editors who were all put in charge of separate titles, with a large majority that also had to work together in the same universe, especially when it came to books about team-ups. But no real clear rules were set, as the idea was so new that DC really didn't know how to handle it properly, and things kept changing all the time. For example, the Flashpoint story wasn't actually meant to be a catalyst for an entire line reboot, but it did serve as an opportunity for them to do that. The problem is actually explained really well by Scott Snyder, who was in charge of writing for the New 52 titles Batman, Swamp Thing, and Superman Unchained. When talking to Polygon, he said, quote, "We didn't really have time. We were starting over, making the characters younger, their histories malleable, and because it was all so raw and unformed, so new and exciting to everyone, there wasn't really a chance to build an uber story yet. We were making it up every day and then tearing it apart and then making it up all over again. So we were all just working on the fly. It was innovative and fun, but as exciting as unpredictability can be, it can wear on everyone a bit. My big regret, architecturally, is that in all the exuberance, we didn't get a chance to build something equally exciting when it came to an overarching story. Something to play out in a year or two, something that spoke to the spirit of the whole initiative." Now, there were other issues that came with the New 52 as well. When it was announced officially on May 31st, 2011, DC described the reboot as, quote, "a historic renumbering of the entire DC Universe line of comic books with 52 first issues." But DC pretty much failed to mention the continuity reboot element of the whole thing, which is arguably the biggest part. That news eventually came, but in subsequent announcements about titles, which showed that it was almost all pre-existing characters with only a few new titles, which made people confused about what was so new about the New 52. There was also some issues with diversity for the comics. The New 52 promised a modern update of the DC universe with the idea of gaining a ton of younger and more diverse readers, but the writers and artists involved were mainly straight white men. The gender diversity was a large part of this, with only 2 women employed on DC's 52 new books, writer Gail Simone and artist Amy Reeder. So DC was trying to also bring in a more diverse group of talent at the same time, with people like Christy Marks, an animation and video game writer. The lack of female writers probably led to the next issue, which was the actual portrayal of female characters in the stories, with characters like Catwoman, Harley Quinn, Starfire, and Voodoo all being criticized for being overly sexualized. The Power Girl series, which was cancelled, and then also the return of Barbara Gordon to the Batgirl mantle, which made Stephanie Brown and Cassandra Cain become essentially shoved to the sidelines. Now, the actual launch of New 52 was incredibly successful on the numbers side of things. DC was reaching really fantastic numbers for their first launch issues, and fans seemed to be jumping on into everything. But now, DC readers were able to see all the continuity problems that the writers and editors had been dealing with, and many of those problems hadn't been entirely resolved by the time things came out. There were questions about how the different series interacted with each other. The example used in the article that I read is that both Action Comics, which stars Superman by Grant Morrison and Rax Morales, and Justice League, which featured Superman by Jeff Johns and Jim Lee, opened up with storylines set in the past, despite the fact that other series that had those characters were in a modern setting. Now, despite that really strong launch, sales quickly fell for the number of titles, leading to a whack of cancellations. I'm talking 27 of the 52 new series were cancelled after only 2 years, and many of those didn't even make it past 1 year. Not only is that a lot, but most of those were the non-superhero titles, including Blackhawks, Men at War, GI Combat, Team 7, and Sword of Sorcery. New titles that were fresh and almost definitely needed more time to really bring in a fan base. Now, this was compiled with strange choices from DC for the writers who were working on titles that were still on the go. For example, in December 2012, Gail Simone had been fired as the writer of the Batgirl title, but in less than 2 weeks, Simone announced she was the new Batgirl writer after only a 2-issue interruption, and no one has ever publicly said why that actually happened. DC was trying to keep the initial flame going for the New 52, which resulted in panicked uncertainty for the people actually working at DC. By 2014, DC was really trying to figure out what to do to save themselves from the steady decline of interest in the New 52. Previous gimmicky attempts had either failed or been abandoned, so instead the company went hard into 3 weekly comic series that kept close connections to existing monthly titles, with Batman Eternal, The New 52 Future's End, and Earth 2 World's End. Future's End had 4 writers splitting duties evenly, but both Batman Eternal and Earth 2 World's End had a single writer managing plot and overall direction of those series. Now, these 3 series would lead into a separate project titled Convergence that was published in April and May of 2015. This was basically an event that replaced the entire DC superhero line and also marked the beginning of the end for the New 52 era. DC announced that the New 52 branding would be retired the month after Convergence ended, which was followed by DCU, DC Inc., and DC Zoom. Now, while the reboot itself was largely a big mess on the publication, continuity, and management side of things, there were some really awesome comics that came out of the whole thing, and those definitely deserve some recognition. So, for this part of the Attempting to Explain, I'm talking about the must-reads. We have Wonder Woman by Brian Azzarello, which mixes great action with poetic writing and a respectful portrayal of Diana's character, and it's probably the #1 best thing from the New 52. We also had Batman by Scott Snyder, which has never really missed, and it gave us the Court of Owls, which, oh my stars and garters, that's essential. Animal Man by Jeff Lemire is also an absolute essential. It's basically a roller coaster of different genres, and even in its weakest moments, like the Raw World arc, it still slaps in comparison. Also by Jeff Lemire is Green Arrow, which has a really intense, cool adventure mystery theme with really stellar writing and kind of somewhat experimental art. The Flash by Brian Buccellato and Francis Manapul was an incredibly fun run on the character, and no, that was not a pun. Shazam by Jeff Johns was also incredibly highly regarded by a few people online, but Jeff Johns also was responsible for Justice League, Aquaman, and Forever Evil, which were all fantastic, but my absolute favorite of those would definitely be Forever Evil. Swamp Thing was just an absolute killer all the way through, with a Scott Snyder run on the character that was cool, but was followed by a Charles Soule run that kind of overshadows it. Action Comics had a few writers, but Grant Morrison and Greg Pak's runs were probably the best. They had controversial moments, but also a lot of fun ones, and some of it is probably also the best Superman writing around. Grayson by Seeley and King is a bag of awesome, intense, fun, and humorous comic writing and art, and definitely deserves your eyeballs. And then Batwoman by J.H. Williams, Red Lanterns by Charles Soule, Batman and Robin by Peter J. Tomasi, Detective Comics by Manapul and Buccellato, and Batman Inc. by Grant Morrison are all on my lower tier of stories from this time that also kinda hit the spot. Also, you should definitely check out I, Vampire, Frankenstein, and Sword and Sorcery. Not the usual superhero stuff, but very very, very good. All in all, the New 52 was meant to change the comic book landscape and also the DC continuity for the foreseeable future, but it ultimately failed to do either of those things. In 2016 with DC Rebirth, 2017 with Doomsday Clock, and 2019 with Dark Knight's Death Metal, DC essentially undid all the continuity changes that they created with the New 52, making it one giant flop that confused the entire fanbase and made all the DC wikis way harder to follow. But it did give a lot of people fresh takes on familiar characters, some truly great stories that are continued and loved to this day, and despite its relative failure, it definitely brought new readers into comic books, and that is arguably the best thing that fans of comic books can appreciate about it. It's always a positive to grow this awesome community of people who just love to flip through the pages of new and old comics for a little escape from reality.
With the House of L. This family tree is pretty extensive, so we're just going to stick with Earth 1 for this section. Although very little is known about them, Superman's most distant ancestors on the planet Krypton were Feln, his son Rugad, and his son Tomnu. No information is available on these ancestors, but Tomnu's son Arok is the first ancestor of note. Arok the Magnificent was a warlord who brought civilization to the planet Krypton with the help of a potion of strength. His magnificent strength caused enemy soldiers to pledge fealty to him as they believed he was a god. In his final military campaign against the warlord Uved, he kidnapped Uved's daughter Milia in hopes of forcing a peaceful surrender. Milia fell in love with Arok, and the two were married and named Bethgar and Bithgar of Eurica. A quick explanation of that: a Bethgar and a Bithgar are the equivalent to a governor and a governess, and Eurica was a large continent on the planet Krypton. They had a child who they named Kal, which is Kryptonian for child, and the family adopted the surname El, which means of the star. Kal-El the First grew up to be the second Bethgar of Eurica. The Els ruled for over 20 generations, being mostly benign rulers with a few tyrants thrown into the mix to keep people on their toes. The next El whose name we know was Wabel, a tyrannic Bethgar. Wabel had two sons, Vadel and Hyrel. Vardel became the next tyrannical Bethgar, and after a quarrel between the two brothers, Hyrel was forced to flee his homeland. He had two sons, Japhel and Tyoel. Japhel was a prophet for the god Roa, who predicted a great flood that would smite all the wicked Kryptonians while sparing the righteous, making him Noah in space! When the flood came, Tio, who by the way was a zoologist, called down winged beasts to save the people. Japhel, Tyoel, and the survivors then set upon rebuilding their society, but not before Japhel made another prophecy predicting Krypton's eventual doom. Tyoel had descendants such as Bur-El, who was the friend of an inventor, Kilgore. Kilgore invented several important things on Krypton, such as the compass and the hourglass, the latter of which he invented so that the Kryptonians could keep track of the tides in order to dive off of cliffs into the water to harvest an algae called silten, before the Drotho, a bunch of giant birds, could beat them to the edible plant life. When no one else had faith in the old man's invention, Burrell tested the hourglass by diving off the cliffs, proving that they had kept accurate time. Burrell soon married Kilgore's daughter, Wedna, and they had two children, Tro-El and Val-El. Val-El was a great explorer who set out across the Dandahu Ocean and discovered Vathlo Island. His troubled brother was a member of his crew who eventually led a mutiny against Val-El. When this failed, Tro-El and his men were left on an uncharted island which became Bokos, the Island of Thieves. One of Val-El's descendants was an astronomer named Sul-El, who invented the telescope just in time to discover a starship coming towards Krypton. Krypton's first encounter with alien life resulted in the planet being enslaved by a race called the Vrangs. His son, Hatuel, led the slave revolt against the aliens and went on to invent the electric motor and the electromagnet. Hatuel's descendants included an inventor named Wirel, who invented Krypton's first audio recording equipment, and a scientist named Shuel, who was a respected mathematician and computer theorist. He had a daughter named Fedra Shuel, a legislator, and a son named Tharel, who reformed Krypton's criminal justice system. His son, Plen-El was a respected novelist whose son Nox-El was Krypton's greatest musical theater star. After this brief generational stop in showbiz, Nox-El's son Phil-El became a gifted surgeon who pioneered several Kryptonian medical techniques. His son Sorn-El was an agriculturist who helped end world hunger on his planet. His son Im-El was an atomic scientist who revolutionized Krypton's industry standards. He had two sons, Pir-El and Yu-El. Yu-El was an influential priest, and Pir-El was the commander of the Kandor Kryptonopolis forces during the planet's last war, which he ended by developing a chemical weapon that made the opposing army become passive and interested in pursuing peace. His son, Tala-El, was one of the founding members of the Kryptonian Science Council, which united all of the separate nations of Krypton under one government, and he actually wrote the planet's constitution. His sons, Pim-El and Gam-El, were a detective and an architect who teamed up to stop a plot to sabotage the rebuilding of Krypton's capital city, Kryptonopolis. Gam-El had a son, Var-El, who figured out interstellar travel without the use of a spaceship and journeyed to Earth, where he was stranded and eventually died. This inspired his son, a scientist named Jor-El I, to develop an experimental hyperspace rocket and go to Earth to study the planet, taking extensive notes. Jor-El I had 3 children with his wife, Nimda Andor, 2 of whom are very important to the Superman mythos. Getting the less important sibling out of the way, we have Nim-El, who was a weapons manufacturer. He was present in the city of Kandor when it was shrunk and put in a bottle by the villain Brainiac. He and his wife, Dondra Clutan's son Don-El, became the police chief of the Bottle City until they were freed by Superman. He went on to create a new Kandor city on an outer dimensional world called Roken. Another of Jor-El I's sons was Zor-El, another scientist. When his brother discovered Krypton's impending doom, he tried to build a rocket for himself, but ran out of time. When Krypton was destroyed, Zor-El's home, Argo City, was left intact and hurtled through space with its inhabitants. He married a woman named Allura Inzi, but they soon discovered that Argo City was turning into kryptonite. Zor-El managed to delay the city's demise by covering the planet in a lead shield. This shielding held for many years until a meteor shower caused its destruction, resulting in kryptonite radiation flooding the city. In order to save the life of his teenage daughter, Kara Zor-El, Zor-El placed Kara in a spaceship and sent it to Earth. Once the rocket was away, he managed to save several Kryptonian lives by transporting them into a dimension similar to the Phantom Zone, which he called the Survival Zone. They were trapped there for many years before eventually being rescued by Supergirl. Zor-El and his wife then joined the Kandorians on Roken. Their daughter, Kara Zor-El, is of course Supergirl. When she came to Earth, Superman agreed to train her to be a superhero, but weirdly made her live in an orphanage instead of letting her stay on his couch or in the Fortress of Solitude. She was eventually adopted by Fred and Edna Danvers, a rocket scientist and his wife, who had lost their son Jan and were hoping to adopt a child to help with their loneliness. Supergirl became a powerful hero in her own right before eventually dying in a fight with the Anti-Monitor in the Crisis on Infinite Earths, and being erased from existence in the ensuing reboot of universes. She was later brought back to existence in the New Earth continuity with a slightly different origin, where she was Lana Lang's foster niece. Okay, so backtracking a bit, the third son of Jor-El I was Jor-El II. Jor-El was a gifted scientist who discovered the Phantom Zone and created the Phantom Zone projector, a device used to banish Krypton's criminals to the interdimensional realm. This secured Jor-El a spot on the Science Council. Due to an accident where a missile test had gone wrong and destroyed the colony on one of Krypton's moons, the Science Council banned all forms of space travel. Believing that Krypton's doom was approaching, Jor-El continued to develop experimental spacecraft in secret, hoping to evacuate the planet. When Krypton's destruction began, Jor-El realized he had run out of time. He and his wife, Lara Lor-Van, the daughter of another Kryptonian scientist named Lor-Van, decided to place their infant son Kal-El in one of the experimental rockets, and using the information collected by Var-El and Jor-El I, sent Kal to Earth, where he would not only survive, but thrive. They launched the rocket shortly before the planet exploded, killing them and everyone else on Krypton. Kal-El's rocket got to Earth, where it landed in Smallville, Kansas. He was found and adopted by the Kents, which leads us to the Kent family tree. The Kent family tree can be traced back to 6th century England, where a feudal lord named Sir Edmund Kent was killed in a jousting tournament by the evil Sir Oswald Bane. His son, Brian, inherited his lands and trained under a knight named Sir Grot, who trained him to be a fierce and cunning warrior. Fearing that Sir Bane would consider him a threat if he knew how skilled Kent was, he pretended to be meek and unskilled. One day, while in the Forest Perilous, he discovered a silver suit of armor, as well as a sword, shield, and a helmet which could conceal his identity. He donned the armor and became known as the Silent Knight, a heroic knight who never spoke and fought Sir Bane's forces. He had many adventures, sometimes working with King Arthur and his Knights of the Round Table, before eventually retiring and marrying Lady Celia Penbrook. The next known member of the Kent family tree is an American print shop owner from the 1800s named Silas Kent. He had 2 brothers, Ethan and William, but they're not really notable. Silas and his wife Abigail had 8 children: Belinda, Emma Lou, Jeb, Joel William, Jonathan, Lucy, and Owen. Silas was originally from Boston, but moved with his family to Lawrence, Kansas. Silas was a staunch abolitionist, which put him on the bad side of many of the locals, including a man named Luther Reed, with whom he got into frequent fights. Luther tried to run Silas and his family out of town, but Silas stood firm. When Silas discovered that pro-slavery legislators had rigged a territorial election, Silas used his printing press to print the entire Declaration of Independence on the front page of the town's newspaper. That night, Silas was shot by persons unknown, although many suspected Luther Reed to be the guilty party. Silas's son Jeb accused Luther of murdering his father and vowed revenge. This threat was pretext enough for the corrupt local sheriff to arrest Jeb with the intention of hanging him. He was rescued by his brother Nate. Jeb had a child named Taylor with a woman named Lily Beaumont, but he eventually joined up with the Jesse James gang. His brother Nate was eventually forced to bring him to justice, which resulted in a gunfight where Jeb and his gang were all killed. Nate married a woman named Mary and had children, which eventually led to the birth of their descendant, Sam Kent. Very little is known about Sam Kent, but in Superman Birthright number 3, Martha Kent describes him as a spiteful, needy man who worked hard to make his son feel stupid and insecure, although in this book he is referred to as Matthew Kent, so we'll have to pardon the continuity gaffe. In my opinion, Mark Waid is the best comic book writer of his generation, so I'll give him a pass. This time. Anyways, Sam had 2 sons named Harry and Jonathan, with a wife whose name we don't know. Harry was married to a woman named Sarah, but he died in an accident on the Kent farm when he fell under a thresher. Jonathan and his wife Martha were the couple that found the rocket that Kal-El came to Earth in, and they became his adoptive parents. Hey, Batman's mom is named Martha too! What a random coincidence that I hope is never an important plot point in a movie. Anyways, Jonathan and Martha named the baby Clark Kent, and they were instrumental in teaching him right from wrong, as well as helping him deal with his developing powers. Clark Kent, of course, grew up to be Superman, the Man of Steel. He had a few different love interests over the years, such as Lana Lang, but he eventually married his fellow reporter at the Daily Planet, Lois Lane, which brings us to the Lane family tree. This DC Comics family tree is mercifully much easier to keep track of, although there is some variation depending on which continuity you're working off of. In the Earth 1 continuity, Sam Lane and his wife Ella are the owners of a horse farm in Pittsdale, Iowa. In the New Earth continuity, Sam Lane is a general in the United States Army who had 2 daughters with his wife Ella. He had wanted sons and as a result was cold and distant, forcing his children to do extensive combat training and apparently treating them more like soldiers than his children. He was an enemy of Superman, believing that it was only a matter of time before Superman would turn on humanity. He faked his own death, appearing to sacrifice himself to defeat the villain Imperiex, but was later revealed to be alive and working with Lex Luthor in a secret government facility that is overseeing the actions of the villain Brainiac. After he used the villain Reactron to kill the recently freed Kandorians in the new Krypton story, his daughter Lois called him a monster, and the files proving his involvement were leaked online by Jimmy Olsen. He then took his own life to avoid the shame of being arrested and taken before an international court. In the Earth 2 continuity, his daughter Lucy is married to a man named George Tompkins and has a daughter named Susie, who is a precocious child who tends to make her Aunt Lois's life as difficult as possible. In the Earth 1 continuity, Lucy Lane is a flight attendant who is the on-again, off-again girlfriend of Jimmy Olsen. In the New Earth continuity, she was still a flight attendant until she was blinded in a hijacking. She became depressed and tried to jump off a roof, but was rescued by Bizarro. Bizarro hero had a weird powder coating his body which somehow restored Lucy's sight. Like her Earth 1 counterpart, she dated Jimmy Olsen for a while, but eventually broke up with him and started dating another Daily Planet reporter named Ron Troop. Lucy became pregnant and married Ron, eventually giving birth to a son named Sam Troop. After Sam Lane faked his death, she joined the military and eventually was brought into Sam's inner circle in an attempt to deal with the new Kryptonians from Kandor. Sam outfitted Lucy with a mystical suit which granted her powers, making her Superwoman. Posing as a Kryptonian, she infiltrated the Kryptonians, killing several of them. She was defeated by Supergirl and taken into custody, whereupon Lois disowned her as family. Which brings us to Lois. The older daughter of Sam and Ella, Lois Lane had no greater desire than to be a journalist. In the Earth 1 continuity, when Lois was in high school, she entered a contest being held by the Daily Planet, where whoever submitted the best news report would be awarded a job at the planet once they came of age. She found herself in competition with a young Clark Kent, and the two uncovered an evil scheme by a villain named Paul Corey. Lois submitted her report and won the competition. After graduating high school and minoring in journalism at Raleigh College, Lois was hired by the planet and became one of its best reporters. In the New Earth continuity, she visited the Daily Planet when she was 15, lied about her age, claiming to be 19, and asked Perry White for a job. Lucy spoiled her ruse, but Lois was undeterred, breaking into LexCorp to try and find a scoop good enough to warrant being given a job at the prestigious paper. Luthor caught her and had her searched, but she managed to hide an important paper in her mouth, gave it to Perry White, and was given the job. She and Clark Kent eventually got together, and he trusted her enough to marry her and reveal his secret Superman identity to her. The two were married for years, and briefly adopted General Zod's son Lor Zod, who they named Christopher Kent, but this was cut short when Chris was pulled into the Phantom Zone while helping Superman to defeat the General and his forces. Lois and Clark eventually had a biological child who they named John. At the age of 10, John began fighting crime with his father as the new Superboy. John became best friends with Damian Wayne, and the two became the Super Sons. After a journey through space with his time-displaced grandfather, John crash-landed on Earth 3 and was kept prisoner in a volcano for several years by the villain Ultraman. John eventually escaped and found his way home, where he discovered that what had been several years for him was only a few weeks on Earth. When his father left Earth to fight alien threats, John became the new Superman.
At 10, Green Arrow. Oliver Queen. The young heir to a billion-dollar corporate empire at Queen Industries led a reckless and extravagant lifestyle that deeply disappointed his father. In an attempt to teach him responsibility, Oliver was assigned clerical duties on an oil rig in the Pacific, but he was unfazed because he ended up turning the rig into a party hotspot. However, one fateful night, people hijacked a helicopter that was intended for a rock star and then took control of the rig. Ignoring his friend's caution, Oliver confronted these people, armed with only a bow and arrow, a skill that he had learned from his father. They were holding on to a detonator for a cache of explosives, some of which were strapped to Oliver's girlfriend Lena. With a single shot, Oliver knocked the detonator from that leader's hand, but it still triggered an explosion, resulting in the death of his girlfriend. Tommy, Oliver's friend, sacrificed himself to shield Oliver from the blast, suffering severe burns in the process, but it ended up causing Oliver to be shipwrecked on a deserted island. Started a year-long journey of survival, relying solely on his bow and arrow. So not exactly like the TV show version. I want to see Green Arrow in the DCEU. In at 9, Robin. Robin is a prominent character in Batman's crime-fighting endeavors. I mean, it's literally Batman and Robin. Is his sidekick, his partner in not crime. Over the years, there's been 5 people who have held the mantle of Robin. Dick Grayson, who was a young acrobat with a tragic past. Jason Todd, he was the second Robin, who was just a troubled orphan. Basically, I want any Robin. Sure, Tim Drake became Red Robin, was like an independent contractor, and then there was like Stephanie Brown, who was the 4th Robin, and then there was Damian Wayne, the current and 5th Robin, but like still, okay, there needs to be some form of Robin in the DCEU, especially since George Clooney came back. In at 8, Amalgamverse. When two entities known as the Brothers, the embodiments of both the Marvel and DC multiverses, remembered each other's existence, they forced heroes and villains from their respective realities to battle. The winner would then get to destroy the loser and their own respective multiverse. This was the Marvel vs. DC storyline. To prevent this from happening, however, the Living Tribunal and the Spectre joined forces and combined the two universes together, creating the Amalgam Universe. This universe had its own unique history, which was was like a combination of both multiverses. So, with this new universe, there are plenty of combined heroes with incredible abilities. From Superman and Captain America to Iron Lantern and Superboy and Spider-Man, like Dr. Fate, Doctor Strange, and Professor X all put into one. There's tons of insane characters in this universe that I would absolutely love to see. Like, Lobo and Howard the Duck is a hilarious one. Like, I need it in live action and I need it bad. Along with Ghost Rider and Flash combined, okay? And not to mention Red Skull and Lex Luthor. I'd love to see some of these guys in the new DCEU, especially because that would be such a huge event. Please do it, that would be so dope. I feel like that's what they should be building to next. And at 7, Green Lantern. Hal Jordan, a former military test pilot, wields the power of a Green Lantern as Earth's protector in Sector 2814. He plays a vital role as one of the founding members of the Justice League, which you know who they are, okay? We all want Green Lantern, but we're all too scared to have Green Lantern because of Ryan Reynolds. But it's okay, we can have a Green Lantern. It would be fine as long as it's played by David Ramsey. I want Green Lantern to be in the Arrowverse, but it's not gonna happen, so give it to me in the DCEU with John Diggle.
6. Deathstroke and Terra. Deathstroke has committed more than his fair share of bad deeds over the years, but one of the worst crimes he's committed has to be his romance with the teenage superhero Terra. The Judas Contract is one of the most iconic Teen Titans and Deathstroke storylines, where readers learn that Terra was not only a villain sent to spy on the heroes, but was also dating and having intimate interactions with the Titans' arch-enemy, Deathstroke. All of us know that this relationship was actually a full-grown adult using someone far too young for his own villainous intentions. Yet, writer Marv Wolfman has explained his intention to reveal Terra as the true villain and the one in control of the relationship. But we aren't going to pretend that that's acceptable. Terra, being brainwashed, dismantled the team from the inside out, and it completely wrecked the Titans. She and Deathstroke were eventually foiled by intervention from Deathstroke's son, Jericho, and Dick Grayson in his first outing as Nightwing, with Terra passing away at the story's conclusion, having brought down a building around herself in a blind rampage. DC chose to retcon this relationship in order to dissolve the creepy factor, which was definitely a smart move, but it's still uncomfortable nonetheless. Number 5. Batman and Talia al Ghul. While Batman and Catwoman not staying together breaks my little achy breaky heart, it's Bruce Wayne's relationship with Talia al Ghul, the daughter of Ra's al Ghul, that really takes the cake for one of his worst. Bruce and Talia acted as if they were truly in love with one another, yet nothing seemed to be genuinely that way. All Talia cared about was fulfilling her father's quest for conquering the Earth, and with some rather extreme methods. That was never going to mesh well with a superhero like Batman. While that doomed the relationship from the start, the real horrible failure of the ship came later. In order to have a mega awesome child, Talia put the Caped Crusader in a compromisable position with the use of some substances. She then proceeded to take advantage of the semi-unconscious Bruce Wayne to become pregnant. Maybe the worst part here is that she birthed the child, Damian Wayne, in secret, then polluted Damian's mind with murderous tendencies and a superiority complex, and then Talia dumped the little assassin on an unsuspecting Batman's doorstep, completely throwing Bruce's life into chaos and madness. There are different versions of this tale where Bruce may have been in full possession of his faculties, but it is shown otherwise in Batman Volume 1, number 565. Number 4. Adam and Jean Loring. Once upon a time, the Justice League superhero known as the Atom had a pretty great wife, Jean Loring. Jean and Ray have been involved before Ray was ever even a superhero, so unlike a lot of other superhero-civilian relationships, they were into each other without there being some kind of weird power dynamic. Unfortunately, when Ray became a hero, things began to fall off a little bit more. Jean fell in love with Ray, but she struggled to get on board with the fact that now her life was always in danger by association, and she was constantly put in danger. It is very true. The relationship struggled because of this, and they both each had their own little entanglements. On the plus side, her cheating gave us the Sword of the Atom story, which made a lot of people fall in love with the character of the Atom. But she still cheated. He's not innocent either though. The rest of the story saw the Atom going and finding a tiny little micro-civilization in the jungle, and then he had his entanglement with their little micro-princess. Then, later on, Jean becomes some crazy powerful villain, and it's nuts. Number 3. Nightwing and Starfire. This is probably the worst of the bunch, not only because it breaks up a long-beloved relationship between Nightwing and his Teen Titans teammate, Starfire, but also because the writers of the comics retcon things about multiple characters' histories that either made no sense or completely ruined the integrity of those characters. After deciding that Barbara Gordon is the perfect fit for Nightwing over Starfire, the beginning pages of Nightwing Annual No. 2 in 2007 gave us Nightwing confessing how absolutely madly in love he is with Barbara Gordon. The story then goes on to retcon their entire history, stating that they have been in love since the days when they were Batgirl and Robin, despite their weird age difference. And then, if that weren't weird enough, the book turns Dick Grayson into a cheater. Dick shows up the night before he's supposed to marry Starfire and spends the night with Babs. So he cheats on Corey, then Dick also gives Babs an invitation to his wedding after just spending the night with her. And she wasn't even aware that Dick was still planning to get married in the first place. It's messed up. Number 2. David Kane and Lady Shiva. This one barely even counts as a relationship. David Kane was one of the mentors that turned Bruce Wayne into Batman, but he didn't want that to be his legacy. Kane decided that he needs to have a child who manages to outdo Batman's training, and he needed the perfect mate to do it with. Sandra Woo-san is one of the deadliest martial artists in the world. As a kid, Sandra and her sister Carolyn trained with each other, creating a unique martial art that they mastered and would display in spars with each other, which unfortunately gained the attention of David Kane. Sandra always held back against her sister, and in order to unlock her true potential, David removed Carolyn from the equation and told Sandra that he would do the same to her unless she has his child. And she agreed. This did allow Sandra to unlock her true potential and to become a martial artist with almost no rival except for her own daughter, Cassandra, but that's because David, being a total sociopath, takes Cassandra the moment she was born for training. Sandra goes understandably nuts and becomes Lady Shiva, an assassin, and the two did not maintain a loving mother-father relationship after that. Number 1. Aviax and the Dinosaur. Alright, buckle up. The Wanderers are a less known group of DC space heroes from the 30th century who, in issue 12 of their first series, get called to check out a planet very similar to Earth, where the dinosaurs are dying off at a faster rate than expected thanks to a gas that was unleashed on the planet. Now, one of the members of the team, Aviax, has the ability to turn into any bird he wants, and he discovers that the reason so many dinosaurs are dying off is because the radioactive gas features a type of radiation that they have not yet evolved to be able to survive. Well, this genius comes up with an extraordinary plan. Since dinosaurs are the precursor to birds, Aviax finds that he can turn into a slightly more evolved version of one species of dinosaur. So he does, finds a good-looking dino mate, pins her down, and then, well, there's no light way to say it, he bangs a dinosaur. While Aviax did stay the night, he still ends up sneaking out on the sleeping dino the next morning. Aviax had zero qualms about seducing a dinosaur and was even excited to go back and tell his Wanderer buds all about it. The poor dinosaur, on the other hand, got left with a baby and a broken heart. Kicking off at number 10, it's Donna Troy and Terry Long. As the mirror duplicate sister of the Wonder Woman, Donna Troy was admired by many of her male teammates and a few teenage civilians to boot. So the question of why the 19-year-old actually married a 29-year-old divorced college professor is one that may never have a satisfying answer. The fact that he was divorced and 10 years older than her can be passable, I guess, but then we add on the fact that he was a complete creep with a perm who would flirt with not only the other female titans, but even his own students, and it just makes it ever so worse. Even with all that though, Terry still ended up with full custody of their kid after filing a restraining order and claiming Donna was too dangerous to be their kid's mom. At least she wasn't the one who complained about not getting help to write a paper because her partner was fighting demons and aliens. Number 9. Kyle Rayner and Alex DeWitt. This isn't so much a failed relationship as it is a completely wasted one. Green Lantern Kyle Rayner came home one day after a long day of superheroing in Green Lantern issue number 54 from 1994 to find his then girlfriend, photojournalist Alexandra DeWitt, had been very savagely stripped of her life at the hands of the villain known as Major Force. But not only did Major Force take Alexandra's life, for seemingly no reason, he also stuffed her into the couple's shared fridge. It was incredibly brutal, and in terms of storytelling, it only served to give Kyle, the male antagonist of the story, the motivation to reach new heights as a hero. Meanwhile, her character, who was genuinely likable and had enough going on in the comic to stand on her own, was gone forever. This act of removing female love interests to spur on male protagonists was a trope in not only comics, but media in general, which practically never happened in the reverse. After this comic came out though, the trope was finally given a name, fridging, or women in refrigerators, and it changed the way female characters were written in comics for the most part, so I guess there is kind of a silver lining to this story. Number 8. Nightwing and Tarantula. Dick Grayson, being the former ward of a guy who has notoriously bad relationships, follows suit with most of his relationships ending in some undeserved heartbreak and some serious PTSD. Take Tarantula for example. Tarantula was a villain who was trying to reform as a vigilante like Nightwing, but unfortunately, Tarantula was far too toxic. She enjoyed being a villain way too much and usually ignored everything Nightwing taught her. Well, in Nightwing 1996 number 93 from 2004, after a slog of a fight that moved out onto a fire escape, Nightwing had the Bloodhaven villain Blockbuster on the ropes when Tarantula showed up. Shocking everyone, Nightwing leaves his morals at the door, realizing Blockbuster will never stop and that his girlfriend is not reforming. He steps aside to allow Tarantula to end the villain's life. He then has a complete panic attack, and she took that as the go-ahead to keep him down with substances and then get it on. Needless to say, they did not stay together for very long after that, but they did stay together, and that's weird. Number 7. Batman and Catwoman. The wedding of Batman and Catwoman was a big freaking deal. It was teased at and built up for a long time. Fans were genuinely excited to see it happen and to see what could come next after the fact. Like a kid of Selena Kyle and Bruce Wayne. That would be awesome. But sadly, the wedding that was so coveted never came to be. Batman issue 50 came and went, and following suit, so did Catwoman. Came and went from Bruce Wayne's life, literally leaving the groom at the altar. Batman was marrying Catwoman so he could literally just be happy. And after some convincing words from criminals like the Joker and her friend Holly, Catwoman believed that if Bruce Wayne was happy, then Batman couldn't exist. Which, 1, that is depressing, but 2, both the Joker and Holly, alongside Riddler, Gotham Girl, Flashpoint, Thomas Wayne Batman, and other villains, were working for Bane, who was manipulating events in order to break Batman emotionally and give rise to the City of Bane event. Well, it certainly sent Batman down a path of absolute despair. He became much more drastic with his fighting of criminals, particularly an innocent Mr. Freeze, and he even donned a less advanced version of his Batsuit so that he would take more of a beating.
In 6, Batgirl. Barbara Gordon is a remarkable figure in Gotham. Known as both Batgirl and Oracle, she's the daughter of James Gordon, and she became a member of the Bat family. Batgirl is just freaking dope, and her costume is also sick. It's better than Batman's original costume. Have you seen that one? While attending Burnside College, she briefly dates Charles Dante. However, a tragic event occurs where Joker shoots and paralyzes her. So she can't be Batgirl anymore, so she takes on a new moniker of the Oracle. Barbara's resilience and transformation from Batgirl to Oracle showcases just her insane spirit and just the fact that she can continue to fight even after being paralyzed. Put her in the damn movies, okay? This is why the DCEU is failing. Do the good stuff. Halfway through, in at number 5, Connor Hawke. The only reason this is on the list is because I want to be in a DC movie. Connor Hawke is the son of Oliver Queen and Sandra Hawke and takes over the Green Arrow mantle after his father's death. When introduced in Green Arrow Volume 2 number 0 in 1994, he appeared to just be a huge fan of the Green Arrow, but it was later revealed that, unbeknownst to Oliver, I was in fact his son. Sorry, Connor was in fact his son. I don't know, it feels fitting that it's my name. It kind of worked out that way. And while he may have the same skills as his father, although less evolved, Connor does end up gaining a couple powers over his father too. One of them being a healing factor, granted to him due to a genetic mutation from Dr. Savannah. This giving him also a higher resistance to pain, which I feel like I have, but for emotional pain. This also allows him to stay in his prime with ease, much like in a Logan aspect, and thanks to Connor's Zen training, he was able to develop a form of clairvoyance, which I also possess. So I mean, it's prime time to put Connor Hawke in the DCEU and have Connor Monroe play him. Just saying. Hit me up, Zack Snyder. In it for Matter Eater Lad. Oh god, I want this so bad. The reason that you might not recognize the absolute DC icon that is Matter Eater Lad is because you're lame. No, actually, the last time this character appeared was over 10 years ago in the pages of a Supergirl comic from 2007. Matter Eater Lad was in essence the hungriest of hippos, but a human. Like able to eat anything and everything he wanted. Did you need a hole in that chain link fence? He has you. Do you need a way out and there's no door? He has you there too. This guy just got to eat, and honestly, I think that's pretty iconic. There was actually a person with this power in real life, if you could believe it, okay? And I'm not even joking. This man would eat light bulbs and bolts, and actually ended up eating a whole bike and a plane from what I can remember. Okay, he was called Mr. Eats All, and he died of natural causes. Look it up, okay? It's the same thing as this guy. I want this on the big screen, please. Getting close to the end, and at number 3, Colonel Sanders. Man, people are gonna be mad at me for this one, but hear me out. Harlan Sanders, the renowned founder of KFC, embarked on a unique adventure alongside the Green Lantern Corps in a comic series called KFC Across the Universe. In this story, Colonel Sanders teams up with Hal Jordan, the Green Lantern, to tackle an unexpected challenge. Sanders reveals his collaboration with the Green Lantern Corps is to bring the delicious taste of KFC to customers throughout the galaxy. However, their mission takes a turn when they discover that the notorious Orange Lantern Larfleeze has been pilfering every chicken sandwich sent into space. Now it's up to Colonel Sanders and Hal Jordan to put a stop to the sandwich theft. I'm not even kidding, this is actually a thing. Please make a Green Lantern movie just so that we can have a Colonel Sanders and Hal Jordan crossover movie. KFC would do it, and they will send an actual chicken sandwich to space again for a promo. Please make this a thing. But ultimately, in at number 2, Dr. Fate. Dr. Kent Nelson, known as Dr. Fate, is a formidable sorcerer and a devoted agent to the Lords of Order. Alongside his wife Inza, he combats evil forces guided by the ancient spirit of Nabu, who serves as his mentor and also technically his possessor when he wears his helmet. He's a founding member of the Justice Society of America, and we all know who Dr. Fate is. Okay, he's pretty freaking dope. However, Kent's journey began when he and his archaeologist father stumbled upon an underground pyramid of the Valley of Ur, unknowingly releasing Nabu from suspended animation because, you know, apparently you can suspend spirit in animation, but, you know, that's aside the point. It's comics. Becoming Kent's mentor, Nabu granted him extraordinary powers and relieved him of the grief that he was dealing with. But like, hey, well, Dr. Fate's dope and I want him in the MC. No, I want him in the DCEU. And then also the MCU because I want the crossover thing like I talked about earlier. And finally, in at number 1, TMNT. Yes, I want this. The Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles are a group of humanoid turtles skilled in ninjutsu and Japanese martial arts. If you didn't know who they were, how did you not know that? They were published originally as a comic by Mirage Comics, but in recent years they've had crossovers with Batman and appeared as playable characters in Injustice 2. In that game, players can access all 4 turtles, with each turtle equipped with their signature weapon. Not only that, but hear me out, Stephen Amell, okay, he played Casey Jones in TMNT 2 Out of the Shadows, so there we go, there's the link. It's just another universe of the DCEU. Instead of Oliver Queen, he's Casey Jones. There, easy link, make this happen, you're welcome, you can have that one for free, as long as you cast me as Connor Hawke.